I'm Kara Mitchell, 28, the perpetual outlier in a lineage obsessed with prestige and appearances. While my brother and sister climbed elite academic ladders and basked in praise, I quietly engineered a health tech platform from the ground up. Tonight marked our annual Mitchell family dinner, an orchestrated performance where I'd typically be interrogated, criticized, and subtly diminished, but fate had a different script, just as I expected to endure another round of subtle jabs. About my alternative path, my phone rang. That call? It shifted the energy in the room. In a single moment, condescension transformed into disbelief. Years of being overlooked dissolved as my family's smug certainty unraveled. Funny how the most satisfying triumphs arrive when you no longer chase validation. Before I take you inside that unforgettable night, when my relatives tried to exclude me moments before discovering I was a multimillionaire, drop a comment with your city and subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what unfolded next. Because sometimes, revenge isn't loud. It's elegantly timed. My childhood was spent in Brookline, Massachusetts, inside a stately colonial mansion with clipped hedges and curated rose beds. The Mitchell name opened doors in Boston's financial sphere, largely thanks to my father, Thomas, a stern financier whose version of love was limited to profit margins and last names on donation plaques. He'd spent decades on Wall Street, cultivating influence while remaining emotionally distant. My mother, Eleanor, brought polish to his power. A Wellesley alumna, she abandoned her own ambitions to host charity luncheons, judge garden parties, and maintain appearances. Her devotion to image was unyielding. In public, she radiated maternal pride, just not toward me. In private, she perfected the art of exclusion, smiling while subtly dismissing anything that didn't fit her vision of success. Then there was James, the heir apparent. 4 years older, groomed for greatness from birth. By 30, he was already a vice president at my father's firm, engaged to a polished debutante whose family crest matched ours in snobbery. His Harvard MBA didn't hang in his apartment, it was displayed in our father's study like a family relic. Make no mistake, his accomplishments weren't just his. They were the Mitchell brand's latest endorsements. Madison, my younger sister, inherited both charm and ambition. While I tinkered with motherboards, she mastered handshakes and eye contact. The perfect political spouse in training, she excelled. At Harvard Law, graced every society page, and never had a hair out of place. She moved through Boston's elite with the ease of someone born for the camera flash, and me? I was the unpolished middle child. The experiment no one understood. As a kid, I dismantled VCRs instead of playing house. By 12, I was coding in Python while my peers exchanged fashion magazines. My room looked more like a startup incubator than a teenager's bedroom. My father, ever the traditionalist, once muttered that I was wasting time better spent on calculus or golf. Computers are for socially awkward boys, he'd scoffed after catching me debugging at 2 in the morning. Mitchell women host galas, not write code. Mother worried I'd never marry. Screens ruin posture and skin, she'd sigh. You'll scare away eligible bachelors. High school brought little respite. I attended Phillips Academy, excelling in advanced math, physics, and software engineering. They came to precisely one science fair, coincidentally held the same weekend James had a lacrosse match. My team won a national robotics competition. They sent a polite congratulatory text from Aspen when Madison advanced to state-level debate. The family hosted a private celebration at Mistral with custom menus. My perfect SAT math score received a distracted, "That's nice, dear," between bites of creme brulee. By senior year, they'd already decided my path: Wharton undergrad, Harvard MBA, a polished consulting role, followed by an advantageous marriage. I defied them. I applied to MIT instead, electrical engineering. The reaction was predictable. My father chuckled. Engineers follow orders. Mitchells give them. My mother looked horrified. But where will you find a proper spouse? All your friends are going to Princeton. I accepted MIT's offer with a partial scholarship. They could have covered tuition without blinking. Instead, Dad called it a lesson in fiscal discipline. I juggled 3 campus jobs and still graduated summa cum laude commencement day. My parents were absent. James had a hedge fund gala. Madison's engagement party was the same weekend. Only Aunt Patricia, my father's renegade sister who'd once run a non-profit in Cambodia, came with a bouquet and a proud grin. My first job post-graduation was at a healthcare startup in Cambridge, earning $65,000 annually. Modest, yes, but invaluable in experience. I worked 70-hour weeks, learned everything about digital health compliance, patient data privacy, and medical billing APIs. At family dinners, though, my role was recast. Kara's still exploring options, my mother would murmur to socialites. As if I were sipping wine in Bali instead of revolutionizing patient engagement software. Little did they know, I was laying the foundation for something far greater than any of them could imagine. All that schooling for what? A glorified secretary's paycheck, my father once sneered across the Thanksgiving table, carving turkey while slicing through my dignity. Madison, ever the queen of covert insults, chimed in with a smile so sweet it could rot teeth. It's inspiring, Kara, how you live without worrying about wealth or prestige. I don't know how you do it. I'd be terrified. I forced a laugh and swallowed my irritation with my wine. Year after year, I tolerated these comments, smirking through their jabs, nodding politely, saying nothing. Meanwhile, I was absorbing, calculating, evolving. While my family clung to antiquated norms and superficial accolades, I was embracing a different education, one found in late-night brainstorming, product failures, and ambitious pivots. The world of innovation had taught me what Boston's elite never would, that real transformation begins when you stop trying to be accepted and start trying to build. The catalyst emerged during my time at the Cambridge startup. I noticed a gaping hole in our medical infrastructure, patients with ongoing illnesses waiting months to see a specialist. Conditions worsened. Lives deteriorated. Meanwhile, hospitals were juggling disorganized appointment slots, and specialists had idle hours. It was madness. And avoidable. One sleepless night in my cramped Somerville apartment, I found my answer. A comprehensive, HIPAA-compliant digital platform, something intelligent, intuitive, and life-saving. I envisioned a virtual bridge between patients and the care they needed. Algorithms would prioritize cases based on urgency, specialty, and location. It would be smart, safe, seamless. Secure Health was born before Sunrise.my bank account wasn't impressive, but it was enough. $50,000, everything I'd saved while juggling rent and loans, went into developing a beta version. By day, I coded. At night, I refined my pitch deck, wrote copy, and reached out to every hospital administrator I could find on LinkedIn. 6 months of caffeine-fueled perseverance led me to the dreaded world of venture capital. The investor gauntlet was brutal. Boardrooms filled with expensive suits and shallow smirks. Do you have a male co-founder? They'd ask, as if a woman couldn't write code and run payroll. You're smart, one man offered, but you should consider being CTO. Bring in someone more seasoned as CEO. Translation: someone with a Y chromosome. 37 meetings. 37 rejections. Until meeting Jessica Barnes. Jessica had once been a hospital CEO. Now, she was funding bold ideas. She read my deck, grilled me for an hour, and finally smiled. You're onto something. She wired $200,000 into my account that week. It changed everything. I left my day job. Hired 3 incredible teammates, a back-end genius, a brilliant interface designer, and Alicia Thompson, who applied as an admin assistant but became so much more. With experience managing hospital operations, Alicia immediately grasped my vision. This isn't an app. It's a revolution, she told me on day one. And she was right. We worked out of a dingy shared space above a pizza shop in Cambridge. Our desks were boxes. We sat on floor cushions. When the heat failed, we wore gloves and drank soup from mugs we used as pen holders. When summer turned our room into an oven, we hacked cooling systems from fans and frozen vegetables. Then came the breakthrough. Massachusetts General agreed to trial Secure Health in neurology. Within months, we had metrics that made executives' jaws drop. Patient satisfaction soared by 42%, appointment wait times dropped by nearly 70%, and physician idle time decreased significantly. We had proof. And proof attracted attention. Hospitals began calling us. Revenue started flowing. Investors lined up. We moved into a modern office in Kendall Square. I upgraded our payroll, brought on 10 new team members, and watched Alicia grow into an operational powerhouse. Soon, we closed $4.5 million in Series A funding. A year later, $28 million more at a $65 million valuation. We were going national, and still, I told no one in my family. They believed I was still an entry-level staffer. Maybe I had a promotion. Maybe not. I let them think I lived in a modest apartment, when in truth, I'd purchased a spacious South Boston loft with exposed brick and views of the harbor. I drove my old Civic to family events, leaving my Model S parked securely at home. This wasn't just for the surprise. It was armor. A shield against their ridicule. I couldn't let them belittle what I'd built, what I'd bled for. My silence became my boundary, and it was sacred. By the time the dreaded family dinner rolled around, Secure Health was preparing to go public. The irony was too rich. Goldman Sachs, my father's firm, was handling our IPO. Our internal valuation hovered near $100 million, and SoftBank had just expressed interest in pre-IPO shares. We were on the verge of breaking every ceiling I'd ever been boxed under. That night, as I stood in my walk-in closet, holding a Chanel gown in one hand and a Banana Republic dress in the other. I chose restraint. Modesty. I wore the simple black one, not because I couldn't afford the finer thing, but because power isn't always loud sometimes. Real power walks into a room quietly, then takes it over. As I turned into the winding drive leading up to the estate where my childhood had been both gilded and grim, I found myself wondering, could this finally be the evening I peeled back the curtain on everything I'd built? I didn't know it then, but I wasn't the only one preparing a revelation. The Mitchell residence in Brookline stood as it always had, arrogant, polished, untouched by time. Ivy clung possessively to its pristine colonial facade. The mansion's alabaster columns seemed to judge each visitor before they even rang the bell. It had graced the pages of Architectural Digest when I was 16, the same year I had quietly clinched first place in the statewide mathematics Olympiad. No one had toasted that win. It had passed without fanfare, overshadowed by Madison's latest equestrian medal. I eased my aging Civic into a spot behind James' spotless Porsche and Madison's pearlescent Range Rover. The parking order itself was symbolic: golden child, golden girl, ghost. Shutting off the engine, I silenced my phone. Alicia knew to only interrupt for absolute emergencies. I inhaled deeply, preparing to play the well-rehearsed role of familial anomaly. Before I reached the stoop, the grand front door creaked open. Margot greeted me with a warmth that caught me off guard. Her hair had more silver now, but her kindness hadn't aged a day. "Miss Kara," she said, smiling as if I hadn't been dismissed by this house for years. "It's truly wonderful to see you." "You too, Margot," I replied, pressing a modest bottle of wine into her hand. A $30 Cabernet, symbolic, subtle. "Is everyone already inside?" She nodded, eyes twinkling. "They're in the solarium. Your brother has some sort of announcement." Of course he did. My heels clicked against marble as I entered the hall of mirrors and memory. Crystal clinks and champagne giggles floated in from the next room. The solarium, my mother's crown jewel, was ablaze with curated warmth. Floor to ceiling panes framed a winter garden dusted with frost. Inside, the cast was predictable. My father, flanked by old money and older scotch. Eleanor, rearranging hors d'oeuvres with military precision. James, gesticulating mid-story, soaking in admiration. Madison, nodding at intervals like a pre-programmed bridesmaid. But then I spotted someone unexpected: Aunt Patricia. The only Mitchell with a soul that hadn't been dry-cleaned. A literature professor with a closet full of paisley shawls and two ex-husbands. She stood out like a smudge of color on an overexposed photograph. She smiled at me with genuine affection. "You made it," my mother said flatly, as if I were late. I was, in fact, precisely on time. At 58, Eleanor Mitchell had sculpted her image into glossy perfection. Her eyes flicked over my ensemble like a scanner. "Traffic from Cambridge?" "Brutal," I answered. Her reply came on cue. "You know, if you moved to Back Bay, we'd see you more. There are charming apartments close to Charles Street." I didn't respond. My father saved me. "Look who's here, our little hacker." His voice boomed across the room. He raised a glass but stayed firmly planted by the fireplace. "Still with that thing?" he added. He meant my company. "The one on the verge of going public. The one employing over 100 people." "Yup," I said breezily. James slinked over next, reeking of bourbon and entitlement. 14 direct reports, corner suite, skyline view, he bragged, to no one in particular. "You still doing the techie button thing?" "Something like that," I replied. Madison arrived, dressed like a catalog page. "You look cozy," she offered, eyes narrowing. "Very on brand." I resisted the urge to tell her I'd met with healthcare regulators that morning. Or that my name had just appeared in a TechCrunch piece about female founders reshaping medicine. The only person who saw me, the real me, was Patricia. She crossed the room without hesitation and folded me into an embrace. "Ignore them," she whispered. "Tell me the truth. How are you holding up?" Still standing, I murmured. The ritual resumed. Drinks circulated, divided by gender. Roles: white wine for women, brown liquor for men. My father grilled James about investment strategies while Madison detailed the challenge of keeping her wedding under 300 guests. "The governor can't make the ceremony," she sighed. "Only the reception." Tragic. I took tiny sips, nodding, imagining their expressions if they discovered I'd dined with that very governor the week prior. Or that my startup had just inked a partnership with the Mayo Clinic. "Dinner is served," Margot announced, offering me temporary salvation. The dining room hadn't changed. Massive mahogany table. Overhead chandelier throwing light on generations of portraits. It was designed to intimidate, and it did. I slid into my assigned seat at the far end. Distant. Deliberate, but tonight, something felt different. According to family lore, one of the somber men captured in an oil painting near the fireplace had once served as an advisor to President Calvin Coolidge, a detail my father never failed to mention during conversations with anyone who mattered. The dining room seating had remained unchanged since childhood. My parents occupied opposite ends like monarchs. James and Madison flanked one side like nobility, while I was positioned across from them beside Aunt Patricia. The empty spot next to me, once reserved for my late grandfather, added an unspoken weight to the space. "I've asked Margot to prepare something exceptional this evening," my mother announced, just as the first course was served. Lobster bisque, decadent enough to feed an entire family for a week. Her smile lingered as she raised a glass in celebration. "To James's professional milestone, to Madison's upcoming nuptials, and to," she faltered, eyes scanning the table for a reason to include me. "To being together." The customary sharing of personal achievements commenced shortly after, the Mitchell family's peculiar version of a performance review. My father listened like a judge, his verdicts rendered through slight smirks or furrowed brows. James took the floor first, delivering a detailed account of his promotion, the generous compensation package, and a particularly challenging merger he'd spearheaded. Mother asked leading questions that framed him as a financial prodigy. "And they chose you over how many candidates, darling?" Madison's turn followed seamlessly. She transitioned from bridal updates to law school accolades without missing a beat. "Brian's mentor thinks he'll run for state senate within 5 years," she shared with humble enthusiasm. Her tone suggested destiny rather than ambition.as. The main dish, roasted duck with herb-glazed vegetables, was placed before us. Every gaze shifted toward me. "And what about you, Kara?" my father inquired with a tone so dispassionate it stung. "Any new developments at your little computer venture?" A swell of conflicting emotions rose in my chest. For a moment, I considered unveiling everything. Years of restraint pushed against the urge to finally declare what I'd built. "Well," I started, cautiously, "the health tech platform I've been developing is doing quite well. We've expanded into several hospital networks." "That's nice, dear," my mother interjected smoothly before I could elaborate. She turned her attention back to James. "Darling, you must tell everyone about the waterfront home you're considering on Nantucket." Dismissed. Again. I fell silent as James enthusiastically described crown molding and yacht slips. My fork hovered over the duck, untouched, my appetite gone. No matter how far I'd come, no matter what I'd achieved, I remained invisible at this table. Across from me, Aunt Patricia's eyes met mine. She offered a look of silent solidarity and squeezed my hand beneath the linen tablecloth. She sensed the storm I was holding back. Just then, Margot entered to clear the plates. My father cleared his throat, a familiar gesture that signaled an announcement was coming. The room fell into an immediate hush. Even Madison stopped describing floral arrangements. "Your mother and I have been reviewing some estate matters," he began, swirling the last of his scotch. "Given James's corporate ascension and Madison's forthcoming marriage, we felt it necessary to revisit the family's financial structure." Mother nodded in solemn agreement. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment discussion. It had been planned and rehearsed. "As you know, the Mitchell name comes with certain expectations," he continued. "We value decisions that reflect sound judgment and uphold the family's reputation." That phrase, family expectations, always preceded disappointment. My stomach tightened. "James will assume the role of trustee for our primary investment accounts next fiscal year," he announced with a firm nod toward my brother. "And once Madison is married, she and Brian will receive the Cape Cod property. A historic family residence will bolster Brian's public image," Madison chimed in, feigning modesty. Then, my father turned his gaze toward me, expression neutral and detached. "Now, regarding you, Kara." I sat upright, pulse quickening. Beside me, Aunt Patricia's fingers gripped mine gently. "We've evaluated your situation at length," he said with crisp precision. "And while we've tolerated your unconventional path thus far, it's time for a change." My mother delicately placed her glass back on the table. "Effective immediately," she stated, "we're cutting you off completely." The words echoed louder than the clinking of silverware. Though I hadn't accepted $1 from them in years, hearing it declared so publicly hit like a slap. No more annual allowance, no access to the Nantucket home, no place in the family trust, my father elaborated, his tone surgical. "Until you demonstrate behavior more aligned with our values." "More aligned?" I repeated, voice finally steady. "Meaning what, exactly?" "Quitting the company I built from nothing to chase some artificial ideal." "Oh, don't be melodramatic," Madison interjected, rolling her eyes as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "But it wasn't drama. It was clarity, and they had no idea what was coming next." "They only want what's best," Madison chimed, her voice silky with pretense. "You're squandering so much potential at that tiny computer thing. It's not too late to turn things around." James gave a sage nod as though delivering corporate wisdom to a wayward intern. The Mitchell legacy isn't just a name, it's a reputation. Everything you do reflects on the rest of us. Optics matter, Kara. I scanned their faces, my father's stern mask of authority, Eleanor's carefully composed worry, Madison's barely hidden smugness, and James's patronizing blend of superiority and concern. Only Aunt Patricia, seated quietly beside me, seemed genuinely unsettled by the direction this conversation had taken. Her brows were pinched, hands clasped beneath the table, as if silently urging me to stand my ground. What is it you're suggesting exactly? I asked, keeping my tone even despite the heat rising in my chest. Should I resign from my position? Enroll in business school to earn a degree you all find more suitable? Or maybe I should simply find a husband who meets your predetermined checklist. My mother arched an eyebrow. Watch your attitude, Kara. We're trying to intervene before you make mistakes that can't be undone. You're nearly 30. That window of opportunity is closing. The absurdity almost pulled a bitter laugh from me. You've had more than enough time to prove yourself, my father cut in, folding his arms like a CEO addressing an underperforming employee. And yet you persist with that healthcare software. Nonsense. It's not viable. You need to think long-term. Make real decisions. Long-term decisions, James echoed in that hollow corporate tone he had perfected. The trust isn't a free-for-all. It's designed for individuals contributing to the family stature. Unfortunately, side projects and app development don't count. My voice remained quiet, but each syllable was deliberate. It's not an app. It's an enterprise. Something I've created from the ground up. Oh, please, Madison scoffed, swirling her wine with theatrical disdain. It's a glorified startup. Those crash and burn every other day. You're living in a fantasy world if you think this thing is sustainable. My mother leaned forward, adjusting the cuff of her silk blouse. You've always had creative energy, darling. But business isn't playtime. It demands a certain kind of intellect, one that values structure, finance, discipline. You've avoided formal training. It shows. Thomas took a slow sip of his scotch before speaking. We're not doing this to punish you. It's a wake-up call. Sometimes reality checks are the only way to prompt behavioral changes. You'll understand someday. The walls felt like they were closing in, the air thick with judgment. For years I had shielded my work from them, not because I lacked pride, but because I feared this exact dismissal. I had protected myself by staying silent, by avoiding confrontation, by waiting. But now, ambushed in the middle of a family celebration turned intervention, that patience was unraveling. So let me get this straight, I said, fingers pressed to the edge of the table. You're severing all financial ties because my achievements don't meet your definition of success. We're reallocating our resources, Thomas clarified with that banker's detachment. It's not personal. It's strategic. Investments require performance indicators. James and Madison have demonstrated vision and responsibility. You've demonstrated potential, I suppose. Potential? I echoed, incredulous, unfulfilled. Eleanor finished for him, her voice cool as the Chardonnay in her crystal glass. Just as I opened my mouth to respond, my purse began to vibrate. Once. Twice. Then again. I recognized the distinct signal immediately. Alicia's emergency code. You've never asked me, not once, what I actually do, I said, ignoring the pulsing call. You decided I wasn't worth taking seriously the minute I chose a path. You didn't script for me. My phone buzzed again. A fourth, then a fifth time. This wasn't routine. This was urgent. I think you should answer that, Aunt Patricia murmured, placing a steady hand on my forearm. It sounds important. I hesitated. My father's jaw tensed at the interruption. If you must, he said with exaggerated tolerance. I suppose we can pause dinner for your little tech drama. I reached for the phone, the screen glowing with Alicia's name. Alicia, what's going on? Her voice came through clear and loud enough for the entire table to hear. Kara. I've been trying to reach you. SoftBank is in. 40 million confirmed. Valuation finalized at 100 million. The IPO is greenlit. Goldman is celebrating. We did it. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words reverberated around the dining room like cannon fire. Say that again? I asked, not for clarification but for everyone's benefit. Secure. Health just crossed 9 figures. The media team's on standby. You're on Forbes' Billionaires in the Making feature next week. And the American Hospital Association wants you to deliver the keynote. Their director personally called. I managed a breath. Thank you, Alicia. Let's regroup first thing tomorrow. Send a calendar invite to the execs. As I ended the call, I turned back to the table. 5 pairs of eyes stared at me, mouth slightly ajar, expressions caught somewhere between confusion and awe. Aunt Patricia's grin spread slowly, deliberately, like dawn breaking through fog. Well now, she said, raising her glass. I believe we owe you more than an apology. But let's start with congratulations. I looked at the faces around me, every one of them had underestimated me. And now, not a single word could undo what they'd just heard. My mother spoke first, her years of social conditioning activating instinctively. Kara, sweetheart, she cooed, her tone suddenly syrupy, so unlike the clipped, measured cadence she usually reserved for me. That's absolutely marvelous. Why on earth didn't you tell us about all this earlier? Across the table, my father's demeanor shifted palpably. His narrowed eyes lost their confusion, recalibrating into cool assessment. He was recalculating my worth the same way he'd evaluate a stock option that had unexpectedly soared. Did I hear correctly? He asked, voice low and deliberate. 100 million in projected value for, what was it again? Secure Health, I answered evenly, giving the name they'd never bothered to remember. We're currently finalizing plans for our public launch, led by Goldman Sachs. I allowed a brief pause. Your employer, incidentally. James's eyes widened, his expression betraying astonishment. You're partnering with Goldman? He asked, incredulous. Which department? Are you dealing with Steinberg's division? Marcus himself, I said without blinking. He's taken a personal interest. Believes in what we're building. My father's brow furrowed in surprise. He's notoriously selective. Hasn't touched a medical IPO in a decade. He made an exception, I replied, letting the words sit between us. Before the silence could deepen, Madison leapt in with her own brand of performative enthusiasm. This is absolutely thrilling, Kara. I always knew you had potential, especially with all that digital talent, she chirped, her voice feigning admiration. Oh, did you? I responded with raised brows. Funny, I don't remember it that way. My phone buzzed again. A message from Alicia appeared. Wall Street Journal wants an exclusive on SoftBank deal. Deadline, 3 hours. Also, your shoot with Frank locked for Tuesday. I looked up. My mother's gaze had landed on my wrist. Wait, is that a Cartier tank? She asked, eyeing the watch she had ignored earlier. It is, I replied. I bought it last year after we closed our Series B round. And that dress, don't tell me it's Banana Republic. Celine, I admitted. I intentionally dressed down. The implication registered across their faces. I hadn't simply succeeded, I had concealed that triumph from them deliberately. My father cleared his throat again. This time, he sounded less patriarch and more executive. Kara, clearly we may have misunderstood the nature of your position. Perhaps we should revisit, cutting me off? I interrupted, holding his gaze. He recoiled slightly. Let's say, reassess our previous conversation regarding resource allocation. My circumstances haven't changed, I said. Calmly. I'm still the same person you dismissed half an hour ago. Don't be obstinate, my mother cut in. Your father is trying to repair a misstep. This whole thing was just an unfortunate miscommunication. No, I said firmly. It was perfectly clear. You've made it known, repeatedly, that my career path doesn't reflect your ideals. That it doesn't contribute to your idea of legacy. James, ever the spin doctor, tried a softer approach. We were just concerned, that's all. You've never talked about any of this. And why would she? Aunt Patricia muttered, barely audible. You lot never listened. How much are you worth, exactly? Madison blurted, abandoning pretense altogether. I regarded her coolly. Current company estimate is 100 million. I retain majority ownership, 51%. A beat passed. Then my father did the mental math aloud. Over 50 million, he murmured, on paper, yes, I confirmed. But post-IPO projections suggest significant increase. We're preparing to expand internationally next quarter. For the first time in years, my mother reached out and touched my hand. This is extraordinary, she gushed. We should organize a proper celebration. I'll call the yacht club. We can host a dinner, maybe invite the mayor. That won't be necessary, I replied, gently sliding my hand back. Don't be ridiculous. This is a milestone, not just for you, but for the family. The family, I echoed. An hour ago, I wasn't worthy of bearing the name. Now suddenly, you want to toast to the empire I built alone. My father shifted again in his chair, discomfort creeping into his features. Maybe we spoke prematurely. Important decisions require complete information. You had the essentials, I countered. You knew I was running a health tech startup. That I launched it myself. That I had clients in multiple states. You dismissed it all as insignificant. James couldn't resist. Well, to be fair, these valuations can be volatile. It's not unreasonable to question long-term viability. Concern isn't the same as disdain, I shot back. Let's not pretend this was about prudence. You didn't believe in me. Madison's eyes sparkled with opportunism. This could actually be perfect, Kara. Brian's campaign needs a tech-forward healthcare initiative. We could collaborate, make real change together. And, she added without missing a beat, Dad could expand the family portfolio before the public offering. Win-win. The audacity left me breathless. I had always been invisible at this table, until now. Until I became profitable.my. Father gave a small nod, the kind he reserved for stock forecasts or portfolio briefings, his mind already working through percentages, returns, and leverage. We should arrange a discussion, he murmured, voice steady with purpose. There are ways to structure the family's equity interest. I'll reach out to Marcus in the morning. No, I said quietly, but with unmistakable firmness. Let's not. That single word stilled the air like a dropped wineglass. 5 pairs of eyes turned toward me, puzzled expressions ranging from mild surprise to outright alarm. I'm not interested in any Mitchell involvement, I clarified, slowly enunciating every syllable. Secure Health is fully funded and positioned exactly as it needs to be. But sweetheart, my father started, adopting the tone he used with boardroom adversaries he was about to steamroll, surely there's value in family participation. Before public trading. Strategic alignment can, no, I interjected again, sharper this time. We've finalized the equity table. There's no space left for additions, friendly or otherwise. James jumped in next, tone laced with suggestion. Even so, a last-minute board appointment wouldn't hurt. A recognizable surname can reinforce public confidence, especially in unfamiliar sectors. I met his gaze, expression unreadable. Our advisory panel is solid. Each person earned their place by believing in the vision when it was nothing more than code and ambition. Across the table, my mother looked like someone trying to process a foreign language mid-sentence. But now that we truly understand what you've accomplished, she said slowly, almost pleading, we want to back you properly. As a family. I smiled politely, though my eyes stayed cold. Now that you've discovered there's wealth behind my work, you'd like to claim it as support? That's not how loyalty works. Patricia let out a muffled cough that suspiciously resembled a laugh, dabbing her lips with her napkin. That's not fair, Madison said, tone pitching higher with forced sincerity. We've always wanted the best for you. This is what families do, we lift each other when success arrives. Is that so? I asked, tilting my head slightly. Where was all this lifting during dinner, before Alicia's phone call changed your perceptions? My father leaned back, attempting a new tactic. There's no benefit in dwelling on what's past. Let's look forward. What matters now is how we move ahead. The Mitchell name could offer significant access points for your enterprise, connections. Only we can provide. I glanced at him, calm as ever. Which exact doors do you think are close to a business valued at 9 figures, preparing to go public through Goldman? No response. Just the faint clink of ice melting in crystal. I rose from my chair slowly, placing my napkin neatly on the table. I appreciate this sudden spike in interest, I said, voice measured, but I've got an early call with our legal counsel tomorrow. I should get going. You're leaving? My mother asked, panic fluttering at the edge of her voice. But we haven't reached dessert. We were going to talk about investor relations, press coordination, long-term strategy. Your father has some excellent finance experts. I've already retained my own legal and media representation, I replied smoothly, collecting my purse. And we've established a top-tier advisory committee. PR, accounting, tax, estate, every base is covered. But we're your relatives, she insisted, eyes wide, as if bloodline entitled her to corporate access. I looked at her. For a long moment. Yes, I said softly. And that's the only reason I kept showing up at these events, hoping one day the people sitting around this table might acknowledge me for who I am, not what I'm failing to be in their eyes. My father stood as well, solemn. Let's not make any rash choices. Kinship is more enduring than a single disagreement. I agree, I said gently. Which is exactly why I need some time to think about what kind of bond one want to preserve here, if any. Turning to Patricia, who had observed the exchange with her usual mixture of quiet insight and barely concealed amusement, I extended an arm. Can I give you a lift? She didn't hesitate. Absolutely. As we made our way to the door, my phone vibrated. I glanced at the screen, Alicia again. Financial Times wants to profile you as Health Innovator of the Year. Need approval by morning. I tucked the phone into my bag as Madison, still clinging to scraps of influence, called out, Kara, we're hosting a political dinner on Saturday. For Brian's campaign contributors. You should come. Share your innovation story, it would mean a lot. I stopped in the foyer, glancing back at the pristine table, the dimming chandelier above it, the family still trying to understand who I'd become. The very people who never once asked who I already was. I'll see if my schedule allows. I said lightly. Just so you know, I charge $50,000 per engagement, especially for campaign appearances. Without waiting for a response, I stepped out into the cool night air beside Patricia. The door clicked shut behind us, sealing in the confusion, the regret, the unrealized pride. As we drove through the quiet streets toward her Cambridge brownstone, the silence stretched comfortably, until she broke it with a snort of laughter. 50 grand per event, she said, eyes gleaming. Your mother nearly fainted on that one. I grinned. I don't usually charge to speak. But for Brian's aspirations? I'd consider doubling the rate. Patricia shook her head with mock exasperation. Puffed up little windbag. He could use the lesson. We pulled up outside her townhouse. Neither of us moved to get out right away. You knew, didn't you? I asked after a pause. About Secure Health. She turned to me with a knowing smile. I saw the feature in the Times months ago. Read the entire spread twice. I was just waiting for you to bring it up when the moment felt right. I should have shared it, I admitted. It just felt safer keeping it separate. For understandable reasons, she said, resting a gentle hand on mine. Your father and I were raised with a checklist: Ivy League degrees, investment portfolios, country clubs. It took me decades to realize success could look different. I haven't fully escaped that pressure, I confessed. I still attend the gatherings. Still hope they'll see me. That isn't weakness, Kara, she said warmly. It's humanity. We all seek recognition. You simply never sacrificed who you are in the process. We sat quietly for a beat before she asked softly, what happens now, with them? I thought about it. Clear limits. They'll need to accept that access to me isn't automatic. I won't tolerate the sudden interest parade. But you won't cut them off, she observed. No, I said. But I'll never again ask for their approval to validate what I've already built. Smart decision, Patricia said softly, nodding in agreement. And Secure Health? I gave her a firm smile. Nothing changes. We continue. The IPO's moving ahead. The mission remains, too important to let anyone's approval or disapproval shake it. She leaned in and hugged me tightly. I always believed you'd create something incredible, Kara. Not because you're a Mitchell, because you're you. That sentence echoed in my mind as I drove home to my South Boston loft, a repurposed warehouse with soaring ceilings, exposed brick, and panoramic harbor views. I kicked off my heels, poured a glass of Cabernet, and exhaled. Moments later, my phone lit up with notifications. A message from my father: let's set a time to strategize your next financial moves. Lunch at the club tomorrow? An email from my mother: you're now on the Symphony Gala list. The chairman would love a conversation. Your firm's name would make a lovely addition to the donor wall. A ping from James: impressive reveal, sis. Want to chat about health tech trends over coffee? Could use some insight. And finally, Madison's message, the most transparent of them all: Brian would love your thoughts on digital healthcare. Also, any chance Secure Health could contribute to his campaign? P.S. I'd love to introduce you to Thomas, Harvard Med, Family Trust, very eligible. I set the phone down without replying and called Alicia instead. I'm so sorry, she said immediately. I didn't realize you were with them. I shouldn't have called. No apology needed, I said. Your timing was perfect. Really? She sounded uncertain. I nodded to myself. They reacted exactly as I imagined. Overnight, my coding project is suddenly a point of fascination. I'm now good enough for their guest lists. Ouch. Alicia sighed. So, what's your move? We focus. IPO, growth, outcomes. The patients come first. They always have. I've got zero time for petty theatrics. Speaking of focus, Alicia shifted into business mode. The team wants to celebrate the SoftBank milestone. Breakfast. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp? Absolutely. And Alicia? Yes? Order the vintage champagne. They've earned it. I walked to the massive window, Boston's glittering skyline reflecting back at me. For years, I'd lived a double existence, the overlooked daughter during family events and the founder guiding a growing enterprise. But now, those realities had collided, and I needed to decide how they would coexist. The next morning, I stepped into Secure Health's sleek Kendall Square office and was met with applause. My team, developers, clinicians, designers, and operations staff, stood in the glass conference room, beaming. 35 people, each one instrumental. Before we pop anything, I said, setting down my laptop, thank you. What we've accomplished goes beyond valuations. We've built something meaningful. Lives are better because of your work. Alicia handed me a glass. To Secure Health, she said proudly. And to Kara, who imagined what healthcare could become when others clung to what it was. After the celebration, I returned to my office to find a massive floral display dominating the space. It looked like a garden center had exploded. A card nestled among the blooms read, "So proud of our brilliant daughter. Love, Mom and Dad." I stared at it, incredulous. Less than 24 hours earlier, I'd been deemed unworthy of family support. Now, I was brilliant. Just then, my assistant popped in. "Your father's called 3 times, she informed me. And your brother's downstairs. James claims he just happened to be in the area," she said, complete with air quotes. "Should I let him up? Give me 5 minutes." When James entered, his eyes scanned the office, pausing at the article from the Wall Street Journal framed on the wall. "Wow," he whistled. "Sleek. Very, Silicon Valley. What brings you to Cambridge, James?" I asked coolly, not gesturing toward a chair. "Can't a brother visit his sister?" he replied, clearly rehearsed. "Sure," I said evenly. "You just never have before." He shifted uncomfortably. "About last night," I stopped him. "If you're here with offers or proposals, don't bother. I'm not interested." "That's a bit harsh," he said, attempting a wounded look. "We're still family." "We are," I acknowledged. "Which is why I'll meet you for the occasional holiday dinner. But this office? My company? That's not family business." "Secure Health isn't open to family involvement," I stated without hesitation. James raised a brow, seemingly taken aback. "That doesn't sound very strategic," he countered. "The Mitchell Network could offer resources that were never offered when I needed them," I interrupted. "And I'm not asking for them now." His composure faltered slightly, but he tried another angle. "None of us realized what you were building," he said. "We thought it was just a phase." "No one asked," I corrected, letting the weight of the distinction hang in the air. "That wasn't ignorance. That was indifference." James fidgeted with his cufflinks, trying to mask the discomfort with poise. "Look, Dad regrets how everything played out last night. That announcement wasn't meant to punish, it was meant to light a fire under you. None of us knew what you had already achieved." "And if I hadn't?" I asked quietly. "If your assumption had been accurate and I was still just an employee at a barely surviving startup, would cutting me off have still been justified?" He didn't answer. I glanced at the time. "I've got a call with people who believed in Secure Health before it became profitable. So unless there's something truly urgent," he straightened up, slipping back into his polished persona. "I'll tell Dad you're unavailable. He wants to make amends. Maybe dinner next week." "Tell him I'll reach out when I'm ready," I replied, voice calm but firm. "And James?" He turned at the door. "If you're ever genuinely interested in learning what I do, ask sincerely. Otherwise, let's not pretend." After he left, I buzzed my assistant. "Send the flower arrangement to Mass General's pediatric wing," I instructed, then turned back to the mountain of real work waiting on my desk, finalizing investor relations documents, analyzing projections for our European rollout, and preparing for my feature with Forbes.in the weeks that followed. I kept my family at arm's length. Voicemails from my mother remained unplayed. My father's invitations were met with polite, impersonal responses. Madison's attempts to integrate Secure Health into her fiancé's campaign strategy were ignored. The only family member I stayed in touch with was Aunt Patricia. One afternoon, she arrived for a visit. I gave her the full walkthrough of our headquarters, open workspaces buzzing with energy, focus rooms filled with engineers optimizing data pipelines, and design studios fine-tuning patient experience flows. "This is remarkable," she said, watching our UX lead demonstrate the new intake portal. "You've created something that truly makes a difference." "That's the only goal that's ever mattered," I responded. "Yes, the numbers are impressive. But it's the outcomes that give me purpose. And that," she said, "is why this works. You solved an urgent issue, not to chase profit, but to help people. That clarity of intention is rare." As we strolled past teams in collaborative sessions, she glanced around the space. "You've built more than a business," she observed. "You've created a chosen family." She was right. I hadn't just launched a tech company. I had assembled a group of mission-driven individuals who respected values over pedigree and innovation over inherited prestige. 6 months passed in a whirlwind. The IPO shattered projections. Secure Health opened on the market at a $220 million valuation. My equity translated to over $112 million, more than the combined holdings of every Mitchell relative combined. Headlines splashed across major outlets. But what mattered more were the stats behind the success. We were now integrated with 450 hospitals. Over 30,000 patients a day accessed care faster than ever before. Emergency wait times had dropped dramatically. Real people were getting life-saving care because of a platform my team built from scratch. Media outlets lined up: CNBC, Wall Street Journal, Forbes. I kept the focus on outcomes, sidestepping any narratives about familial influence. There had been none. The First initiative I announced post-IPO was the Mitchell Innovation Foundation, a $20 million fund for young women in healthcare technology. The name wasn't chosen to honor the family I came from, it was my way of rewriting what legacy could mean. The inaugural project of the Mitchell Innovation Foundation launched with a scholarship initiative aimed at empowering young women from disadvantaged communities. These girls would receive hands-on experience through intensive coding boot camps, followed by mentorship from accomplished female leaders in technology. When journalists inquired whether the foundation's name was a tribute to my lineage, I answered plainly, "It's named after me." My interactions with my relatives shifted into a framework of deliberate boundaries and selective engagement. I showed up for Christmas at the estate, but only stayed for 3 hours, bringing Alicia along as both companion and strategic buffer. I accepted sporadic lunches with my father, ensuring that discussions never strayed beyond baseball scores or the unpredictability of Boston's forecast. My mother's persistent efforts to parade me at galas and charity balls were usually turned down with polite restraint, with one exception, the Children's Hospital fundraiser, which Secure Health helped sponsor. As for Madison's elaborate wedding, I returned the RSVP affirmatively, indicating I would attend unaccompanied and depart promptly following the ceremony due to other obligations. The sole familial bond that truly flourished was with Aunt Patricia. She became a board member for the foundation, lending her scholarly insight and feminist ethos to our grant distribution strategy. We established a weekly dinner tradition, during which she evolved into both confidant and consultant, helping me navigate challenges that spanned both boardrooms and emotional terrain. "You've managed them masterfully," she told me one evening over Thai takeout. "Gracious, but firm. Present, yet independent." "It still stings," I confessed. "Part of me wants them to actually see what I've created, to understand why it matters, not just how much it's worth." "They may never fully grasp it," she replied with tender candor. "Their world operates on a value system that doesn't align with yours. They recognize status, not purpose." She was right. Every olive branch they extended was wrapped in transactional packaging, VIP club invitations, curated introductions to suitable partners, and subtle nudges toward their preferred wealth advisors. Never once did they inquire about our platform's actual capabilities, or the lives we were changing daily. 3 months after the public offering, my father requested a tour of our headquarters. Intrigued, I consented. He walked through the glass-paneled corridors and open-plan workstations, pausing occasionally to nod approvingly at our charts and prototypes. "Remarkably professional," he said at the end, sounding genuinely surprised. "Not at all what I pictured." "What did you picture?" I asked. He hesitated. "Something smaller. Less impactful." For Thomas Mitchell, that was as close to an apology as I would ever receive. "You proved me wrong," he added. "That doesn't happen often." "I wasn't trying to," I replied. "I just wanted to build something that mattered." He gave a short nod, still not fully comprehending, but making a modest effort. It was a beginning, if nothing more. One shift I hadn't anticipated came through therapy. Encouraged by Patricia, I began seeing Dr. Loving, a therapist specializing in familial trauma. In one particularly revelatory session, she posed a question that cut through years of mental fog. "What if," she said gently, "you accepted the possibility that your parents might never truly appreciate your path, not in the way you wish they would?" The thought stung, but it brought clarity. Yes, I had outpaced every expectation they once used to judge me. But that victory hadn't transformed them. True peace wouldn't come from finally being celebrated by them, but from ceasing to crave their validation at all. That acceptance changed everything. I stopped chasing recognition and instead poured myself into authentic relationships. I built genuine friendships with fellow founders, people who understood late nights, failed pilots, successful pivots, and the dizzying highs of seeing a vision realized. I mentored rising stars in tech, young women who reminded me of my teenage self, eager for direction I never received. Most significantly, I started speaking at local schools and underserved neighborhoods across Boston, encouraging teenagers to imagine futures in innovation. One of these sessions, held in a sunlit high school auditorium in Roxbury, a girl no older than 15 approached me afterward. Her eyes were sharp with curiosity and fierce with purpose. "I want to do what you do," she said. "You absolutely can," I told her. "And this time, I meant every word. My family insists I pursue medicine or law," she confided softly. "They believe computer engineering isn't meant for girls like me." Her voice trembled beneath layers of determination. "Have you ever felt dismissed that way?" "Constantly," I acknowledged, sincerity wrapping each syllable. What transformed everything for me was realizing that personal fulfillment isn't anyone else's decision. Not your guardians, not outdated rules, yours alone. "But what if they never get it?" she asked. The doubt in her tone echoed a younger version of me, one desperately craving approval that never arrived. Then construct a journey so unmistakably yours that their comprehension becomes irrelevant, I said gently. Surround yourself with allies, mentors, friends, dreamers, people who align with your purpose and lift your aspirations. In guiding her, I recognized that my family's rejection, while excruciating, forged vital qualities: resolve, independence, and clarity of purpose. These weren't just survival tools, they were pillars that built secure health. Just days later, my phone rang, my mother's number flashing unexpectedly. I saw that speech, she said. The one at the tech summit for girls. Somebody sent it to me online. Silence stretched between us. Then, cautiously, she added, "You're compelling. You have stage presence, reminds me of your grandfather. He always commanded rooms without raising his voice." For the first time, her praise didn't focus on appearances or etiquette. "Thank you," I responded quietly. "I still don't grasp all of it," she admitted. "The software, the digital systems, the patient tools, it's all beyond me. But I can tell it means something. Not just to you, but to a lot of people." It wasn't full understanding. But it was recognition. A subtle shift toward seeing me as I am, not through her old expectations. 12 months after the explosive dinner, I opened the doors to my new Back Bay home for a gathering that looked nothing like those of the Mitchell legacy. Former coworkers, industry pioneers, early believers, supporters who championed secure health long before headlines and valuations. And, after reflection, my biological relatives, standing amidst these individuals, those who had walked beside me in silence, resilience, and vision. I felt something I'd never felt in that Brooklyn mansion: serenity. The Mitchell script hadn't changed, but I had rewritten mine. And glasses clinked. Conversations filled the rooms. When quiet fell and all eyes turned, I offered a toast to achievement defined on our terms. I began, my voice unwavering. Not shaped by inheritance, or prestige, or birthright, but by empathy, innovation, and courage. To those who saw promise before proof. And to rewriting heritage, not through names, but through impact. Across the space, Aunt Patricia lifted her glass with a knowing smile. My parents remained seated, confused yet respectful. Around them, my real community, one of builders, thinkers, and leaders, raised flutes in solidarity. Their faces reflected understanding. The kind I had waited a lifetime to find. Later that evening, long after the final guest had departed and the laughter had faded into memory, I stepped onto my rooftop patio. The city stretched before me, towers glowing beneath a velvet sky, the harbor glimmering like glass. A gentle breeze rustled the hem of my jacket as I exhaled, processing the whirlwind of transformation behind and the road ahead. My phone buzzed. A new alert from Alicia: regulatory approval granted for deployment in NHS facilities across the United Kingdom. I stared at the message, heart thudding, not from nerves, but from awe. Secure Health, once a passion project dismissed as a pastime, was about to transform global patient care. Hospitals, doctors, individuals in need. All about to benefit from something that started as an idea no one had taken seriously. I thought about that girl, the teenager at the tech event, her question lingering like a note held in the air. I imagined her logging on, building code late at night, wondering whether she belonged in a world that constantly told her otherwise. I saw countless versions of her in classrooms, libraries, community centers, all silently hoping for permission to dream outside the lines drawn for them. Maybe my journey could offer that permission. Maybe my scars could signal strength rather than shame. Being shut out of the Mitchell household that night, publicly severed from the family fold, had felt like abandonment. But in truth, it was a release. It untethered me from a legacy that didn't reflect who I was becoming. It forced me to invest completely in my vision rather than negotiating for validation that would never come freely. Pain, I had discovered, could be a portal. Exclusion had made space for growth. Rejection had cleared the path for conviction. There had been no dramatic speeches, no righteous outbursts when they told me I was cut off. I hadn't argued. I hadn't begged. Instead, I built. Brick by brick. Idea by idea, late night by early morning. I kept going until the very thing they doubted became undeniable. Now, a global health initiative bore my fingerprints. Now, daughters and sons could reference my blueprint instead of hiding their aspirations. Now, I stood not as someone defined by her lineage, but by her legacy. If you're listening to this and you've ever been told your dream is too strange, too uncertain, too ambitious, hear me clearly: you do not need permission to pursue what lights you up. You do not need applause to begin, you only need to believe that your intuition is worth following. So tell me, has your story ever been dismissed by the very people you wished would believe in it most? Have you ever stood at a crossroads, torn between pleasing others and honoring your own truth? If so, I invite you to share below. Your experience might be the beacon someone else desperately needs, and if this narrative resonated with your heart, consider liking, subscribing, and forwarding this to someone standing at their own turning point. You never know how your courage might ignite theirs. True success isn't granted, it's claimed, and the truest form of approval doesn't come from relatives, resumes, or recognition. It comes from the quiet knowledge that you stayed true to your calling. Thank you for walking this path with me. Wherever you are in your own journey, I hope you choose to build something no one can take away, because it's yours entirely, and may you never forget, the most meaningful legacy is the one forged in truth, resilience, and the audacity to believe in yourself when no one else will. Good night, and keep building.